I know some of you think I'm trolling with this series, but nah, I'm telling you, these are legit takes. Hey guys, Dov here, and you wouldn't believe it, today we're talking about the Huntsman General for the Empire, myself up against Norsca, here with Noldor, a patron of mine. And yeah, let's go over the builds here real quick. The Huntsman General, obviously with the Black Lions, the Hellblaster, wagons even. We've got two Knights of the Blazing Sun here, and two Reichsguard over here who also have fire damage from a Warrior Priest, along with some state troops, all anti-large, halberdiers and spearmen. No pistoliers, I know, but I decided to bring the gun wagons here. For Norsca, though, we've got some Skinwolves, chariots, berserkers, a few marauder spears, and some javelins. Wulfric leading the way with a Lore of Firecaster for some Fimir great weapons, and some more regular Fimir out here with some Warhounds. So, pretty good stuff. What does the General bring to the table? Well, fire synergy is the biggest thing, obviously. He's got this reload skill ability here that also gives fire damage, and, of course, the oil flask, which can be a little bit janky to use, but if you can use it effectively, that 50% or 48% speed and 50% flame weakness is quite impactful. So I'm going to try and make good use of that here. Taking an overarching look at things, you can see I'm popping that hail of fire right there as we pop a Kindle Flame Fireball. Knights of the Blazing Sun going out. We're going to get a pretty nice decisive charge here, trying to take out those Skinwolves early on. Meanwhile, over here, I take an engagement against the Fimir with the Reichsguard. Hounds are going to rush in, and we've also got the Javelins in support, so it's going to be a pretty bad engagement for my Reichsguard, unfortunately. I mean, they have decent enough defense. They'll weather some of the damage, especially with the defense buffs there, but burning heads going off in the front line. Mostly able to dodge them with the state troops there. And yeah, I'm going to overchase on some Marauder Horsemen there pretty badly for just a moment, but can we actually use the oil flask is the question. Right now, I'm kind of pulling back. I also need to keep Wulfric off of Gaston, because of course the Huntsman General is absolutely Gaston. No one hunts like Gaston, by the way. And here we go. Let's see. I think, yeah, here we go. I'm going to line up an oil flask on these Fimir right here. And will it actually go off? Yes, it does. Makes contact. Some of the Reichsguard just kind of jankly are involved here anyway, kind of road blocking. But here comes the Warrior Priest, and I'll have you note, again, all these units, the Halberdiers, the Reichsguard, all get fire damage. The Fimir were probably going to rout anyway. The War Lions were also, or the Black Lions rather, were firing in there, though they themselves are getting counter-fired quite nicely by these Javelins. That's a little bit of a problem. For me, I've been able to limit the Chariot in the front line with these Knights of Blazing Sun somewhat. They've been doing a lot of work, but I'm also having a hard time protecting my caster from Wulfric as well. Gaston being on foot kind of works in his favor somewhat in that Horse Lords sometimes they just tend to knock him around and they can't really get that great of a grip on him. But anyway, my Reichsguard and the Warrior Priest charging through now, getting into the back line. The Javelins have decent enough stats. The Reichsguard aren't necessarily going to win super fast since there's only a handful of them there, but they'll definitely make their presence felt there. And all the meanwhile, just a quick note of positioning, you can see how these halberds are just kind of screening out on this flank where the Fimir are. More or less, I've just been using them to mirror the Fimir because they're kind of my most direct counter for them. But Knights of the Blazing Sun have broken through the front line in some places. The Firecaster, as he's getting killed and Hunter of Champions to death, drops some piercing bolts of burning, try and dump off as much magic as I can before he bites the dust, and he is going to absolutely kick the can. He'd rather get kicked in the can by Wulfric. So there's that. Meanwhile, Gaston's trying to focus as much as possible on Wulfric and get some damage on him, but the Black Lions still having two models online is pretty decent. We can keep firing into these Javelins here. Whoops, a little bit of camera jankiness and also a little bit of targeting jankiness as the side of the unit is absolutely clipped there. But nice hound play getting to the back line as well, having to sweep them back and get them off the Black Lines once again. That allows the Fimir to come through, having to use the halberds to screen Wulfric off of Gaston now. Very important that I keep him safe. Meanwhile, way in the back there, Reichsguard cleaning up with the Warrior Priest. Balance of power still very close, even if not slightly in the favor of Norsca here. But yeah, a little bit of a miss fireball, but that's okay. Probably wouldn't have made that great a contact on those halberds anyway, it's hard to say. But here we go, one more oil flask going to be thrown at Wulfric himself. And the Knights Blazing Sun, they're going to charge him right in the face, give him some lances to the teeth. Only a handful of models make contact, but considering that's a 50% increase to their damage there when they're already, you know, well over 100, 110, 120 even weapon damage between their weapon strength and charge bonus added, so a 50% buff on top of that, it gets pretty ridiculous pretty quickly. If you actually grab one of these guys in a Volkmar campaign, like where you start with Knights of the Blazing Sun, trade them into his army early on, you can do some pretty hilarious things rear charging with them on pretty much any unit. But yeah, Wulfric, you can see he took a pretty considerable amount of damage there, all things considered. The halberds obviously aren't helping as well, and as he starts to take more damage, balance of power will tick more and more in my favor. The horsemen, having used up all their ammo though, going to come now into melee, and the skin wolves that I failed to fully chase off the field are also going to come back and potentially cause some problems here. These throwing axes are completely out of ammo, so they're now going to run in melee and just make sure that the Black Lions can't operate, actually manually dismantle a cart there. Going to tear apart the other cart, no doubt. Looking pretty grim. My one hope is that the Knights of the Blazing Sun have kind of been regrouped, the Warrior Priest now leading them instead of the Reiksguard, and a beautiful charge once again. And they get those skin wolves. Thankfully the Marauders weren't quite close enough to get a full support, otherwise we might have been potentially outnumbered here. And you can see as they rush in, the Knights of the Blazing Sun, there's not really enough of them to hold out here. Likewise, Gaston had maybe like one or two more shots to finish off Wulfric. Wulfric actually ends up routing there, despite getting a hit on Gaston. Looking like we managed to pull through without getting him killed, and even made some pretty good use of that oil flask. I've still got one more use left, and we're going to go ahead and just throw it at these Marauder Horsemen because, I mean, they're fighting Knights of the Blazing Sun in melee, and yeah, Knights of the Blazing Sun, although the armor definitely helps here, their sustained combat stats are actually, I mean, the attack is great, don't get me wrong, but the defense is really not amazing, so might as well just stack this in our favor. Go ahead and throw that oil flask, got that extra damage spike, and look at how much they just get melted. I'll keep the HP bars up so you can see the chunks of damage just coming out of there, especially that Warrior Priest splash attack. Of course, he does fire damage as well. The spears, everything does fire damage. That's one of the things I love about the Empire. Best fire synergy faction in the game, and the Huntsman General is just kind of icing on the cake. Definitely less competitive than Marcus. Yes, absolutely. I will readily and fully admit that, but he's definitely a lot of fun and viable, and kind of one of the points of this series is to show you guys how you can sort of make things work, in a sense, right? Even though they might not necessarily be the most competitive, a lot of these lords and units that I'm showing off, they're maybe niche at best, you still can use them, and you can make them work. And I would say, because of the way the game is set up right now, like, unless you're playing at the absolute highest level, you can pretty much do, not necessarily whatever you want, but you can definitely do things and use whatever units. You just kind of have to build around it, right? And I don't know, basically anything is viable is what I'm trying to say. Even in the highest levels of play too. Sometimes, like, a good example is Guac, who won the qualifier that I hosted for the Everchosen. Congratulations again to him, by the way. And yeah, he won with some pretty unconventional builds throughout the whole course of that tournament. And I mean, it just kind of goes to show you can often surprise your opponent, because people might think the meta is a certain way, and that some units are just awful and you should never ever take them. Even units as terrible as Treekin, I would say, maybe have their uses. But anyway, going back to the battle here, yeah, Knights Blazing Sun definitely pretty hard carry, along with the synergy of the Huntsman General. I would say a few decent oil flasks there. I don't know if they were necessarily decisive, but him being able to stay alive into the late game, continue to provide those buffs, get the fire synergy buffs also for the Hellblaster. He also did the majority of the damage to Wolf. I guess between the flask and his bow, yeah, let's say he did the majority of the damage to Wulfric, or at least aided in it. And yeah, overall, well played to Noldor as well. He's definitely not, I would say, as a patron of mine, he's a Bretonnia main, not somebody who plays Norsca super frequently, and I would say he definitely played them very, very well, all things considered. I don't know if he's ever even played them in multiplayer before at all, so yeah, great job. The Javelins especially just getting mad value, mowing down my Hellblasters. But yeah, fun stuff. Gaston, he is what he is, you know. If you want to have some fun and take him and do stuff with fire, you can. Yeah, he's definitely worse than Marcus. I'm not trying to be make him into something he's not. And this arrow of actually ability is okay, but I generally find it to be a little underwhelming. This -5 melee attack, I mean, it's alright to bring, but if he's surrounded in melee, he's going to have problems anyway. But yeah, the oil flask is really what you bring him for, right? And the ability to give another secondary fire effect, so that wherever your warrior priest is not, which is usually by your gun line, he can then give this. And yeah, also has decent missile damage, it has to be said, especially when you compare to something like just the Glady. And I know he doesn't have any mount choices, so that is not necessarily the most fair comparison, but I mean, elves are known to be good archers, right? Glady here, yeah, 388 damage over 10 seconds. And the Huntsman General, pretty considerably more. Not primary AP either, but that plus 100 bonus versus large as well is absolutely massive. Especially against a faction like Norsca, where their only real high armor targets are going to be Famir. Like Mammoths, yeah, they have 70 armor, but that's not really going to do... it'll do a decent bit against this, but it's not going to do as much. You'll still be able to get effective damage, and even against Famir, you have other tools that can deal with them, as you saw there. So, yeah, definitely a big fan of Gaston, a fun pick, and I like setting stuff on fire, so he's good for that. Hopefully you guys enjoyed. If you like this sort of content, be sure to like, subscribe, hit that bell notification. Every time I upload a new video, you'll be notified. Thanks again, we'll see you next time.